In the digital transformation and enterprise technology space, there's a general lack of trust for software vendors. But why is that? Why do we distrust vendors in the marketplace? That's what I'm going to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stages of digital transformation success. And one of the biggest dynamics we find in the marketplace is that there's a lot of distrust for software vendors. Not only the companies that sell software, but also the implementers and the system integrators, the technical components and the services side of software. For some reason, there's a lot of distrust for these vendors, and that's what I want to talk about today is what are those areas of distrust and what is it you can do to see through that skepticism and through that distrust to really get at a digital transformation solution that makes the most sense for you. One of the big things we're seeing in the marketplace is that a lot of organizations don't trust software vendors because of their technology bias. What I mean by that is most technology vendors are understandably focused on one sort of technology. They focus on the software they sell, and they tend to oversell the capabilities of that one software. And what happens is a lot of organizations end up getting in too deep with that one vendor or assuming that that one software solution can handle all of their needs when in fact they oftentimes can't. A couple of other examples of things that software vendors often oversell is things like best practices. So they often sell these industry best practices that will define your workflows and your business processes for you. But unfortunately, that's not true. And the reality is you have to configure workflows to meet your individual needs. And another example is cloud. A lot of software vendors are overselling the capabilities of the cloud, the cost of the cloud, the value of the cloud. Not to say it's not the right option for a lot of organizations, but there's a mismanaged expectation that goes along with that. So this overall technology focus and technology bias is one of the biggest reasons why organizations tend to distrust the software vendors. Now, once an organization has selected a certain software vendor, often their next order of business is finding the technology implementer, the system integrator, the value-added reseller, or the technical implementation firm that's going to really install the software for them. And what we see in these cases is that these service providers are also biased. They also have their myopic view of the world that's focused on one sort of technology. They tend to drink the Kool-Aid, if you will, that's focusing on the same messaging that the software vendors are putting out. So that dynamic also creates some distrust in the marketplace as well. And another reason why technology service providers are often not trusted is because of the economic incentive they have to peddle and push certain types of technology. So most ERP consultants in the marketplace are getting some sort of referral fee or commission or revenue share for bringing new clients to the software vendors. So it's understandable why these service providers would be so myopically focused on promoting one product. But at the end of the day, that self-interest oftentimes leads to distrust, which can be difficult to navigate when you're defining your digital transformation strategy. Now, a third reason why software vendors are oftentimes not trusted is because they provide an incomplete vision of what the digital transformation should be or what digital transformations in general are. So in other words, what they typically do is lead with a technology first sort of mentality. They're going to figure out the best way to design, build, and deploy technology, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's very incomplete. It's an incomplete answer that neglects the most important parts of a transformation. So things like organizational change management, the business process reengineering, getting that internal alignment on what our future state operating model is going to be, the data migration, the architecture, the program management. Those are just a few examples of areas that software vendors and the service providers typically neglect, but those are the things that are so important to transformations. So when you look at why projects fail and why software vendors and their implementers run into so many problems, it's not because they're not capable necessarily of deploying technology. It's because they're not looking at the whole picture of what it's going to take to make a transformation successful. So this distrust is something that you have to work through and navigate and figure out how do we mitigate that lack of distrust or the capability gaps that these organizations have. Another area that drives this distrust is a lack of flexibility among many software vendors and the service providers we discussed. What I mean by that is that the software vendors oftentimes either focus on using a cookie cutter approach to deploying technology in a way that they've seen work at other organizations, which sometimes will work for your organization, but in other parts of your business, it probably isn't going to work because there is no one size fits all answer to technology. Or what's potentially even worse that often happens is that when there is a mismatch between what your needs are and what the technology can do, software vendors are often too quick to just customize the software because they can. They're good at it. They know how the software works. They can develop it. They know all the tools to make it customized for your environment. So those are some of the things you've got to think about, is making sure you've got a clear vision of what you want so that you don't have this technology first sort of mentality to your transformation. Now, the fifth thing to think about is that lack of accountability that software vendors oftentimes have. Oftentimes, they're paid by the hour to deploy technology, and they're paid whether or not the technology is deployed in a way that's sustainable and aligned with what your needs are. There's also a difference between the software, quote unquote, working versus working for your business. And those are two different things. And oftentimes the software vendor and the implementer is only on the hook for making sure that the technology works. In other words, the technical aspects work and the configuration works, the workflows work. But the technology working and aligning with your business needs and your operations are two very different things. And if you don't get that latter part right, that's going to lead to failure. But the software vendor is only accountable to the success of a technology deployment, not a business or a digital transformation. So that's something you've got to think about, is what do we need to do to mitigate that risk of us just deploying a technology solution that works from a technical perspective, but doesn't work for our business. So I've talked about some of the reasons why so many organizations throughout the world have this distrust of software vendors and technical implementers. But what is it we should do about it? That's the big question that I want to answer here. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we abandon software vendors or the system integrators or the implementation partners. Those are very critical components of a digital transformation. But what I am saying is that if you think about and look at all the things that we've talked about in this video, those areas of distrust, there's a common theme here, which is that we have an incomplete picture. There's a picture that we need to complete as an implementing organization, either through our own internal resources and or through external independent technology agnostic resources like the team at Third Stage Consulting. Those are examples of resources you can use to fill in some of these gaps, to provide the organizational change capabilities, the program management, the process reengineering, the architecture, data migration, the integration, all that stuff that is oftentimes missing from a software vendor and their technology services provider. All those things can be addressed in other ways, but you just have to go in with your eyes wide open and know what those things are and how we address those. So I hope this has given you some guidance on how to mitigate some of these risks with software vendors. And for more advice, I encourage you to download our annual digital transformation report, which is a guide of best practices and software reviews, independent comparisons of different technology options in the marketplace. Really, best practices meant to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to download that. I've included a link below. I've also included links to other resources that I think will help you through your transformation, so I encourage you to check that out in the description below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. And when you add to the fact the economic incentive that these technology implement, and when you add to the, wow, that's a tough one. Oh shoot, what was the word? Do you remember what I was saying? Like how is starting it now? Then the, and credibility gap with, let me say that. Was the sound okay with the, I know I had a clean sentence break at the previous, okay, so I can do whatever, I guess. Yeah. And the system implementer